Welcome back, everybody. It's nice to see you back in the second half of our presentation this evening. My name is Ingrid Shockey, and I'm co-director with Mike Elms of the Wellington New Zealand Project Center. And just as a reminder, the second half of our presentation this evening will feature short slideshows of our Project Center sites, followed by two panel discussions. Panel one is titled Engaging Diverse Partners in Oceania, Indigeneity, Community, and WPI Students. Panel two is titled Climate Resilience and Sustainability in Oceania. I'll begin first with the site-specific Project Center presentations featuring Wellington, New Zealand to start the set. Next slide, please. So Mike Elms and I have invited student teams to the Wellington Project Center since 2012. To give a sense for this site for our viewers who have not traveled to New Zealand, we're located in downtown Wellington, in the heart of the capital of New Zealand, within walking distance to many of our project hosts and agencies. It's home to Victoria University of Wellington, with whom we have a recent MOU, and where we also link with faculty from the Department of Maori Studies, one of whom is a panelist later today. The site is extraordinary, as you can see from this image, and it's extraordinary for its urban landscape that is so closely connected to the natural landscape. We're just blocks from the harbor, we're backed by old volcanic mountains, we're a short walk from a spectacular botanical garden, which you can see a little bit of in the foreground, and the Zealandia Bird and Wildlife Sanctuary. There are miles of hiking and cycling trails and coastline that lead directly from the city. Aotearoa is a dynamic country. We feel this every day when we are there with the small earthquakes and the tremors that are still shaping the North and South Islands. So in this setting, our students directly observe the ongoing struggle with non-native flora and fauna, which continue to threaten the balance of life here. And we also learn about the challenges of coexisting perspectives in a land first known by Maori and then by European settlement. So our project terms on site bring us close to complex environments in a time of climate change, and they demonstrate the relevance of collaborative strategies for planning and governance. Next slide, please. So what are our students doing while working in Wellington? The IQP fundamentally asks STEM students to learn the art of stakeholder engagement, and to do that in complex environments and communities. So as you can see from these images, our students work side by side with local, regional, and national governmental organizations and community groups. So for example, our students have worked for many years with the Greater Wellington Regional Council under the watch of Ross Jackson, who you'll meet in panel two later today. And in this case, in the center photo above at the top of this slide, students were assessing the effectiveness of outreach and engagement around a flood planning process that affected a part of the Wellington region that is particularly susceptible to climate change. So that meant students interviewing residents, evaluating existing programming, understanding the message and the messaging of the agencies, and really entirely out in the field, observing and learning from community members in order to understand perspectives, ask difficult questions, collect data, all of these things that can help push local initiatives further. In the center image towards the bottom, we have an Instagram recently posted from the Department of Conservation. I don't know if you can read the text, but what we have there is an individual in a boat who has spotted a Hector's dolphin. And this is a reference that the Department of Conservation was making to a project from a few years back in which a student team developed a reporting system and an app that could mark sightings from sightings of threatened Maui and Hector's dolphins. And I remember the slogan at the time was, "Rounded fin, turn it in." And so you can perhaps make out the rounded fin on the top of this dolphin. But this tracking app continues to be an important tool for citizen scientists to contribute to the conservation efforts of the Department of Conservation. On the lower right, a longtime sponsor, Pat Van Berkel, was working with students on public perceptions of non-native pest control strategies. This was a topic we worked on last year and we have studied for many years. Next slide. So what have been some of the outcomes of our work in New Zealand? As you can imagine, most of our projects introduce students to the difficulty of decision-making in support of biodiversity, climate action, risk and hazard preparedness, and not just around earthquakes in that case, but also that includes tsunami awareness, sea level rise, climate change adaptation. And they also work on projects having to do with community well-being. So we're teaching our students about approaches to research and knowledge systems around the world. This image shows a range of projects from recent years, topics we've tackled over our 2-month stay in country. And this term we're underway with 6 new projects ranging from developing national guidelines to mitigate dog and marine wildlife conflict. In this case, it's often dogs versus penguins, dogs versus sea lions on coastal beaches. We're also assessing governance models that support biodiversity. A 3rd project this term is focused on understanding local perspectives about the role of wetlands in a region. So at the end of the term, our students have had an extraordinary opportunity to learn an appreciation for complexity and for how collaboration actually works outside of the university. If you'd like to learn a little bit more about our project center in Wellington, you can reach out to Mike Elms or to me. We'd be happy to tell you a lot more about it. For now, thank you for this. And I'm going to turn your attention to Lauren Matthews for the next presentation about the Hawaii Project Center.
Hey, hi folks. I'm going to tell you a little bit about the Hawaii Project Center, although at the moment I really am wishing that I was in New Zealand. But the Hawaii Project Center is one of our youngest project centers. It was founded in 2019. So that means that we had our inaugural group of students participating last winter at just about this time. So January of 2020, these 16 lovely students that you see here participated, completed projects with 4 different agencies. And we were based at that time on the big island of Hawaii, in the lovely town of Hilo, Hawaii. We have since migrated the project center to the island of Oahu, where we will be based in Honolulu at some point in the future when we are able to travel again. We currently have 4 teams who are 2 weeks into their projects working remotely this year. They're working from their homes or from the WPI campus. I just wanted to put a bit of a plug in for them. They are doing really good work. And I just wanted to say how amazed I am at the resilience of WPI students. Even under really difficult conditions, these teams are doing great work, and I'm so impressed and happy to see where they're going to take their projects. So if we can have the next slide, please. I did want to tell you, I don't have a long history to tell you about the Hawaii Project Center and our interactions with local collaborators there. So I just wanted to tell you a little bit more detail about a couple of exemplar projects that last year's group completed on the Big Island. So at the top of these 2 photographs here, you see one of our teams pictured with their sponsor liaison. And this team completed a project with the County of Hawaii Recycling Division. And the team was tasked with developing a draft proposal for a reusable food takeout container program that would hopefully someday be implemented in Hilo and potentially expanded to the rest of the Big Island, and then maybe even exported to other parts of Hawaii. The team worked in collaboration with the county government as well as a number of local zero waste or reduced waste recycling organizations. The photograph on the bottom shows a couple of our students who were working with the Legacy Reef Foundation, which is a relatively young and small and very active nonprofit organization on the west coast of the Big Island. And this organization does a great deal of outreach, particularly local outreach, and particularly with local schools, to kind of educate local communities about the status of and degradation of coral reef ecosystems globally, and in particular in the Hawaiian Islands. So this group was working on helping them with some outreach materials, and in particular with some interactive digital tools that they could use with their outreach activities. So that's a couple of exemplar projects. And if we could have the next slide. Thank you. So again, we're in our second year of the Project Center, and this year's teams are doing great work to help me develop the future of the Project Center. So I just wanted to talk a little bit about where I see our future in the center. And I think our near-term future is going to focus probably on environmental and sustainable development kinds of projects. So we're looking to develop relationships with governmental and especially non-governmental nonprofits and academic sector with respect to environmental projects. Also interested in projects related to historical preservation, general community development. And I did want to kind of put in a little plug. If anybody would like to talk to me more about the ongoing development of the center, please do feel free to shoot me an email, and I'm happy to get back in touch with you. And I think at this point, we are going to hear now about our Melbourne Project Center.
Hello, good afternoon, good morning, good evening to all of our guests in different time zones. I am Lorraine Higgins, and with Steve McCauley, I direct the Melbourne Project Center. And we get a lot of help from Jonathan Chi, who is our local coordinator. So we've put our contact information here, and we welcome any thoughts from you or interest in future collaborations. There's our mascot. Here we go. So the Melbourne Project Center was established in 1998, which makes us at this point 23 years old. And we have completed 217 projects over the year with 788 WPI students, and in collaboration with 44 community partners who are in and around Melbourne. And I've just given a few examples here of some of the folks we work with, so you can see really the range of organizations, everything from NGOs and nonprofits to government agencies and research institutions. So I think you know, in 1998, we did a handful of projects, and we were only in Melbourne once a year for one academic term. About 10 years ago, we moved to 2 academic terms. And today we're there up to 3 academic terms and doing anywhere from 12 to 18 projects a year. I think our longevity has allowed us to develop really close relationships with some of our partner organizations, and also to sustain work in particular areas over a series of projects and sometimes over a series of years. So students can really build on one another's work from year to year. And I think there's an example here in the photograph. We've been working with the Port Phillip Eco Center now for 3 years on microplastics pollution. And at the top, you see one of our early teams collecting samples of microplastics on the beaches at St. Kilda. And then down below, you see a more recent team who wanted to expand on that work and develop a way to collect samples of microplastics in the waterways, in the water catchments that actually lead into the bay. And the group designed this pump system, tested it, And they created a video so that baykeepers from around the world and other citizen scientists who may be interested in using this, collecting data and advocating for government policies and changes that having to do with microplastic pollution can use it. One of my favorite parts of this project was an animation that the students also created to tell the story of a plastic water bottle and its travel from a receptacle on the streets into the streets and down into the water catchments, into the bay, and the havoc that it wreaked there. So this fellow in the center is Spencer Hoagland, and he's a guitarist, and he created the animation, and he also wrote the music, background music. So our students do a lot of really creative work. And as I think Ingrid was explaining, they really have a chance to work with local people. This group worked a lot with boaters and anglers on the water to understand the currents better, to help them really understand how to design this mechanism. They develop creative methodologies for collecting data, and they often deliver products along with research and data that organizations can use to make change. So this is an example of one of our environmental projects, and that is a big theme for us in Melbourne: sustainability, the environment, and alternative energy. Education has become another theme in recent years, and we've done a number of projects investigating ways to make learning experiences more engaging, and especially to students in disadvantaged communities. So our students have designed mystery rooms and invited local kids from the community to come in and learn about biology and physics through hands-on experience. They have designed science activities for kids and summer camps for CSIRO. And more recently, they're looking at the relationship between trauma and engagement in school. And they're interviewing folks really across the globe to learn about the programs and the alternative learning approaches that might be out there. And they're working with a new center north of Melbourne that's really working on this problem. So those are some of the topics. We also work a lot on fire, of course, because we are in Melbourne, and we've been working on fire prevention, fire education projects for years, along with cultural preservation projects at the Museums Victoria. So, we're about to be 25 years old, so we really wanted to do some assessment of our programs. And we assigned 2 teams to interview our community partners, to interview some of our student alumni, some of whom did projects 20 years ago. And we've learned a lot. And the students are telling us that the value of these projects is not just learning about global issues, but learning about different cultures, learning to work on diverse teams. Very important, learning how to manage uncertainty and conflict among stakeholders and groups. Many students tell us that the projects have had a personal impact on them, and it's made them see themselves and their relationship to the world in a different way. And in some cases, has even they've affected their personal and their professional goals moving forward in life. So that's what our students told us. What did our partners tell us? Well, over 83% of our partner organizations reported that projects have had a high level of impact either on their organization or the communities that they serve. And impact can really come in a number of forms. So students can collect data that organizations can use to apply for grants or to create new initiatives. Students sometimes innovate and develop new processes or tools that organizations can use to do their work more effectively. Some of our student research has been published in international publications and been used in the courts actually to adjudicate certain cases. We've done a lot of work on fire, as I've mentioned. And one of our more well-known studies is on the relationship between hoarding and fire risk, which has had an impact on the Melbourne Fire Brigade's outreach and community education on fire protection. Also, we're told that students bring a fresh perspective to organizations, to the staff. They can help reinvigorate the staff and can accomplish things that the staff might not be able to do on their own, might not have enough resources to do on their own. And they bring a high level of professionalism to that work. So those are just some of the impacts. And I'm going to close here just with a beautiful picture of Melbourne at night. And you are going to hear a bit more about some of the projects we've done and some of the impacts from our Melbourne partners who are going to be coming up in the next panel sessions. So with that, I'm going to conclude my overview and I'll turn it over to Ingrid Shockey, who will introduce the first panel.